Artists and athletes are often cast as opposites, almost as if they represent two different archetypes. Think about it. How many times haven't you heard a parent describe one child as the athletic one and the other one as the artistic one? On the surface, sport and art do seem to demand different personalities. Sport is, after all, about action. Art is about creation. It is body versus mind, competition versus contemplation, and so on. But anyone who has pursued either one knows the distinction is way too simple. The art world is, after all, full of competition, and excelling in a sport does require creativity. Many of the greatest athletes are indeed celebrated precisely for their imagination, their ability not just to master the rules, but to bend and reinvent them. This episode is about the woman who redefined figure skating and later changed Hollywood with her figure skating excellence. This episode of 200 Norwegians is about the athlete and artist, Sonja Henie. Over the course of the last months, while working on this podcast, I learned a new word that quickly became one of my favorites: presentism. Presentism is a kind of collective self-importance. We're not only full of ourselves, we're also full of the here and now. We think the time we live in is the most dangerous time, that the next election is the most consequential one ever, and that it's harder to be a man or a teenager than it used to be. As if any of us really knows. If you suffer from presentism, and I'm pretty sure that all of us do, you also tend to become overly judgmental. You interpret past events through modern values, and in the process, you lose perspective. And by the way, you lose the ability to be impressed by those who came before us. If you look at everything through today's lens, it doesn't seem that strange, for instance, that a little girl in Norway in the 1910s wanted to become a figure skater. You've heard of figure skating, right? It's a sport. It's in the Olympics. And if you're good enough, you can even make a living off of it. So what's the big deal? But what if I told you that figure skating wasn't much of a sport back then? That the Winter Olympics didn't even exist? So let's go back. Let's try to escape presentism by stepping into what used to be the present a long time ago. To Oslo in the 1910s, or Christiania, as Norway's capital was still called back then. On Christmas morning, when Sonja was 7, her father asked her what she wanted for Christmas. She said she wanted ice skates. Such a thing didn't really exist for girls her age. But Willem Henie didn't want to disappoint his little girl. He went all over town until he found a shoemaker willing to attach metal blades to a pair of boots. Sonja was over the moon when she opened the present. The very next day she left early in the morning and didn't come home until the evening. Sonja was hooked, and skating, like every sport she ever tried, just clicked. According to the biography Sonja Henie, Kvinne på is, which was written by Bodil Stenseth, Sonja already had an impressive track record at that point in her life. At 5, she could leap 7 meters on skis. At 6, she won a track race. Sports ran deep in the Henie family. Her father, Willem, had been a track cycling world champion. Her brother, Leif, also excelled in several sports. But Sonja was remarkable, even among the remarkable Henies. At Frogner Stadium, the rink had one section for kids and another one for adults. Whenever Sonja sneaked into the adult section, she was kicked out, but she didn't give up. She kept sliding under the ropes. Her dad was there with her, encouraging her to race with the boys and copy the moves of the best skaters. Sometimes he even brought a gramophone out to the ice so Sonja could skate to music. He also got her into competitions, and Sonja won every competition she attended. She became a national champion at the age of 10. At that point, Wilhelm, her father, pulled her out of school. He hired a tutor so she could skate 3 hours every morning and 2 more hours in the afternoon. Sonja Henie was ahead of the curve, and arguably Norway's first elite athlete. While specializing in figure skating, she also trained in ballet. Her mother even took her to London to study with a teacher who had trained the great ballet dancer Pavlova. Little by little, Sonja began weaving ballet into her figure skating. In 1924, the first Winter Olympics was hosted in Chamonix, France. It was controversial at the time. The Nordic nations already had their own prestigious event, the Nordic Games, and feared the competition. They also felt that winter sports belonged to the North, not as a global spectacle controlled by the International Olympic Committee. There was also a purity debate inside the International Olympic Committee. Many believed the Olympics should focus on classic athletics, not seasonal niche sports like cross-country skiing. Despite the resistance, the IOC tested the idea with the International Winter Sport Week, which was later recognized as the first Winter Olympics. It wasn't a given that it would be successful. Figure skating had already been tried out in the Summer Olympics in 1908, and it had a certain appeal. And to the Alps came the 11-year-old Sonja, thinking she would win the whole thing. That didn't happen, to say the least. She fell during her performance and finished last. But a star was born. The sports historian Philip Hirsch wrote a piece on Henie in Sports Illustrated in 1994. In it, he described Henie's performance as a watershed moment for figure skating. In Hirsch's opinion, she, quote, launched figure skating into its modern form by trying to jump, end of quote. Hirsch has been fascinated by Henie ever since he worked on that piece. And here he is, more than 30 years later, talking about how Henie was a tiny sensation in Chamonix.
She'd already been national champion in Norway twice by then. So yeah, she made a splash in the way that but in that little narrow world, I mean, there wasn't much, it didn't go much beyond that. The
Yeah,
eighth person, it's like a one line in a story. Sonja Henie, comma, 11, comma, finished eighth.
yeah.
And because she was a girl and not a woman, there was some more liberty in what costumes. The women used to wear basically long ankle-length dresses, and it was needless to say very hard to even do a simple jump in an ankle-length dress. And Sonia, because she was a girl, was able to wear, what were essentially skating skirts.
Mm.
So, I mean, people were impressed by the little things she did.
Sonja got older and did greater things. But the knee-long skirts weren't just a phase the young Sonja was going through. As she grew older, she kept breaking the rules, and the rules were many.
The norms for women in sport were so old-fashioned that, yeah, if you went out and did something that looked out of the ordinary, you would be, so how dare a young lady act like that?
But Sonja dared, not because she was a feminist, but simply because she was used to doing whatever she wanted. And what she wanted was to skate in knee-length skirts and white boots, which later became her trademark. Her appearance broke barriers, and surely inspired many female skaters. In 1927, 14-year-old Sonja won the World Championship held in Oslo, with Kong Haakon in the audience. After this, she became a national darling. But Sonja didn't just want to repeat the success next year. She wanted to do something different. In the summer of 1927, she went to London and saw the ballet dancer Anna Pavlova perform in person. That was a game changer. In the Olympics in 1928, Henie became the first figure skater to include choreography into the free program. What she introduced would later become the standard in competitions and in ice shows. Here is Philip Hirsch again.
Sonja choreographed the whole program. I mean, she was one of the first to have the whole program be an integrated piece, as it would have been for her idol Pavlova, the great dancer. Um, so she was immediately different that way. That you were seeing someone who was not just a skater who was trying to be an artist, but an artist who was also a skater.
Sonja Henie won the Olympics in 1928, just like she would later win in 32, and every world championship in between. She was now more than just a national darling. She had become an international skating sensation, constantly being invited to perform in front of kings and queens all over Europe. She was also invited to exhibitions and carnivals. Technically, Henie was not allowed to receive money, since she was an amateur athlete, something she had to remain in order to compete in the Olympics. But rumors circulated that her father received money under the table to secure Sonja's appearance. Sonja and her father also traveled to New York, where she was welcomed by the mayor at the harbor. At the time, nobody believed she could fill a major arena in the city. Figure skating was little known in the US at the time, and Henie was far from a household name. But her father knew there were 50,000 Norwegians in Brooklyn alone, and even more Scandinavians. So he managed to convince the right people, and it was a full house event.
Sonja Henie, still the greatest figure skater in the world, delights her New York audience with her incredible grace and skill.
She did some tours of the United States, and they became very popular. This was before the Hollywood type shows that she put on, and they became very popular. And a lot of people, I mean, a lot of people saw, a lot of young girls saw her and wanted to be her because, I mean, she even when she wasn't quote unquote in Hollywood, she had a Hollywood air about her. Very very lavish costumes and very much a diva, and the ice princess slash ice queen image, which is what figure skating. A lot of people thought figure skating was, and but which without being sexist or anything, which but particularly in that era appealed to little girls.
With the growing popularity, it was in the cards that Sonja would turn pro. But she wasn't quite done as an amateur yet, and her last career goal was the Olympics in
Die
36.
Kunst der neunfachen Weltmeisterin ist unerreicht.
The Olympics in 36 was held in Germany, and there weren't just little girls in the audience. One of Henie's fans was a man in his 40s with a mustache. His name was Adolf Hitler. To attend the so-called Nazi Olympics had been controversial in the first place. But Henie now went a step further. After winning, she skated up to the Führer's box and greeted him. The moment was widely photographed and reported across the press, and many Norwegians never forgave her for it. In hindsight, there are many ways to interpret this. In her book about Sonja Henie, Bodil Stenseth poses the blunt question: Was Sonja Henie a Nazi? Her answer is, not really. The blonde Henny was, without doubt, a darling of the Third Reich, and she certainly wanted to stay on good terms with Hitler. There are also reports on her visiting with Hitler. But was she sympathetic to his politics? According to Stanset, Sonja didn't care about politics. The same tunnel vision that arguably made her a great figure skater also made her pretty ignorant about the world around her. To her, Hitler was a powerful statesman she wanted to be friendly with, out of self-interest. Wherever she was coming from, it didn't sit well with many Norwegians, and the resentment certainly grew when Germany invaded Norway 4 years later. But Sonja was about to cross the Atlantic. The old country might not have been that important to her anymore. What she cared about was the new world. Shortly after she arrived, she signed a lucrative contract with the agent Arthur Wirtz. And now she could make as much money as she wanted to, and Sonja wanted to make a lot. She began touring America alongside her boyfriend and skating partner, Jackie Dunn. Her shows became wildly popular.
The show that Arthur Wirtz developed with her, first of all, it was, it was a very lavish ice show. It wasn't just some of the ice shows today are just skater goes on the ice, does a routine, next skater goes on the ice, does a routine. I mean, these had props and stage settings and elaborate costumes and elaborate choreography and it was the same show being performed over and over and around the countries, but they were much nobody had ever seen in the United States had ever seen an ice show like that. There was a famous story that during the Depression, there was would have been probably the late part of the Depression, when Sonja was already performing in the United States. There was a line outside a bank, a very long line outside of a bank, and people thought, "Oh my God, there are people withdrawing all their money?" No, that was the bank where Sonja Henie's Christmas show tickets were being sold. They were just lined up to buy tickets.
Henie traveled through the Midwest and other parts of America, but she kept her eyes on Hollywood. She wanted to become an actress and a star, a dream she had carried since she was a little girl.
Hollywood movies were just beginning to be a big deal in Europe as she was growing up. I mean, and I'm trying to remember when the first movies with sound were, but and people would hear about movie stars, and that was, no, I mean, again, championship skater or movie star, which would a little girl rather be at that point? Well, movie star, obviously.
Going to Hollywood, you would think the odds were stacked against her. First of all, she wasn't a trained actress, and she had a thick Norwegian accent. But Sonja Henie was a savvy businesswoman. She built the Sonja Henie brand and proved that her name could sell tickets, and that's how she got a foot in the door.
Word about her spread, word about her skating spread, and her tours generated so much publicity that she was a known commodity in the United States for sure. So when she and her father went to Daryl Zanuck, I guess or they put together an exhibition on a tiny little rink in Los Angeles, and people showed up, but finally Daryl Zanuck showed up, and Daryl Zanuck really, all he needed to know was that people wanted to see Sonja Henie. He didn't care if she could speak, if she could jump, but he could see that she was attracting people. Attracting people means money, and that's what Daryl Zanuck was in the business of making money.
Need help?
No, thank you. I've been doing this since I was 6.
Oh, you don't know my qualifications for this job.
And her first Hollywood movie made a lot of money. 1 in a Million, as the motion picture was named, was a romantic musical comedy, and Sonja Henie played an innocent girl whose skating talent swept audiences and suitors. After 1 in a Million, A poll of American moviegoers ranked Sonja Henie as the 8th most popular star on the screen.
What did your father mean when he said he won the Olympics and then lost them?
Did you have to knock me down to ask me that?
Come on, tell me, will you?
My father's name is Heinrich Müller. He won the figure skating championship in the Olympics in 1908. Does that mean nothing to you?
Heinrich Müller, 1908. I wasn't even born then. Say, wait a minute. I remember something. What wasn't there something about having his medals taken away because of professionalism?
It wasn't true.
She never was much of an actress. She was a skater for whom a medium was created to make her incredibly appealing in the movies.
In 1937, Sonja Henie starred alongside Tyrone Power in Thin Ice. Almost immediately, rumors swirled about the romance off-screen, and the two of them did nothing to stop it. In fact, by being affectionate in public, they fueled the speculation. According to the book Queen of Ice, Queen of Shadows, credited to Sonja's brother Leif Henie and the writer Raymond Strait, the relationship was less about love and more about publicity.
Did you ever make up your mind to say something to someone, and when the time came to say it, the words just wouldn't come out?
Yes, this happened to me.
Well, what I mean is this. This evening when we went to the cabin for dinner, I made up my mind that I was going to ask you to marry me. And I don't know why I didn't.
I wonder why you didn't too.
You did?
Yes.
Oh, come on.
In real life, Sonja and Tyrone Power never got married. Power went on to marry the French actress Annabella, something the book claims left Sonja deeply disappointed. But here's the catch. That book by Raymond Strait and Leif Henie is one of the most hotly disputed sources on Sonja's life. It was published while Leif was on his deathbed, and many have argued his widow, Sally, was the real hand behind it. Kjellholm, a longtime friend of the Henies, didn't hold back when the book was released. He said, "It is Leif Henie's widow who is behind this dreadful book, and she hardly even knew Sonja. Rarely has so much rubbish and inaccuracy been put between two covers." Whatever the truth was, nothing compared to the tragedy that struck her at the age of 25. That was the year Sonja lost her father, Willem Henie. He wasn't just her dad, he was her closest partner in business and in life. After his father's passing, she called on her brother to join her in America and help her with her business, which he eventually did. And the show went on. Movie offers kept coming, and Henie quickly became the highest paid woman in Hollywood. Despite being a controversial figure, also Norway recognized her stardom.
His Majesty the King of Norway has appointed you a knight of the first class of the Order of St. Olaf.
Henie started building her own mansion in Norway, and in the summer of '39, she went back home on vacation. Even Sonja, usually carefree about politics, felt that something was in the air. Germany had already invaded Czechoslovakia, and Hitler was now an indisputable threat. According to Queen of Ice, Queen of Shadows, Henie called Hermann Göring that summer, the Minister of Propaganda. He assured Sonja Henie that Norway would be spared. That, of course, wasn't true. The German warship Blücher was sunk as it entered the Oslo fjord in 1940, but attacks came from north and south, by air and sea, and Norway surrendered within a month. By then, Sonja's valuables had already been shipped out, and she herself was safe in Hollywood. Politically naive or not, she had prepared, knowing the Germans often took over big houses and used them as command posts. She had instructed her maid to place a greeting card from Hitler on her piano. The trick worked. Her house was spared, unlike the rest of the country. Most Norwegians soon had far bigger worries than Sonja Henie. Still, her indifference was noticed. When wealthy expats were asked to support Little Norway, the Air Force training camp in Canada, Henie also refused.
There was a lot of resentment in her for Norway for years, partly because of that picture, the pictures with it, partly because she did the Nazi salute, and partly because of her initial refusal not to give any money to the Little Norway Airmen, the training base in Canada. One of the documentaries that was done on her, that was actually the one that was done in 1994, tries to gloss that over by saying, yeah, but she invited all these airmen to a party and stuff like that. But I mean, the Norwegians never forgave her for not, her excuse was, well, I live in America now.
Mm.
But Norway, I can understand why Norwegians would never forgive her for your country was invaded, taken over by the Nazis.
Mm.
It'd be easy not to forgive somebody who appeared to, get by to get by, basically let by to get by. I mean, that she did whatever was necessary to be Sonja Henie. And so there was, she goes off to Hollywood and she's got this Hollywood lifestyle, and people see the pictures of elephants and elephant ice sculptures in her swimming pools and this lavish mansion, and she's living like the queen of the world.
In 1940, Sonja Henie married Dan Topping, a sports executive who later became president of the New York Yankees. She also went on to make more movies, such as Sun Valley Serenade, Iceland, and Wintertime. She kept on touring as well, even though the war shook the entertainment world. Many young skaters were drafted, but Henie, resourceful as always, recruited from the ranks of gay dancers, many of whom were barred from military service. The strategy paid off, and with the backing of her savvy manager, Arthur Wirth, Sonja Henie continued to expand her business.
I live right near where she owned, right around me, she owned about 10 or 12 apartments that the Wirtz family, then Arthur Wirtz, the old man who was not a very nice person, helped her. I mean, people say that, she had a big dispute with Arthur Wirtz and whatever, but Arthur Wirtz made her wealthy, by advising her to buy real estate and by advising her to do a lot of other things.
Henie's marriage started to fall apart after just a few years, but Henie wasn't the type to sit around and cry. Instead, she hosted extravagant parties, which solidified her status as a Hollywood diva. Here are a couple of sound bites from the 1994 documentary on Sonja Henie.
All the big names of Hollywood came to Sonja's parties because they were known to be the best. And she would have huge blocks of ice carved like swans floating in her swimming pool during the party. And all of great, I remember tents over her tennis court with flowers hanging down every 2 feet. You just felt like you were in a fairyland. She built her house parties like she was building a movie set.
A very expensive one was when she chartered a plane to bring orchids back from Hawaii. And also when she had the dancing waters and the technician, engineer for Dancing Waters brought over from Berlin, Germany, and paid all of those expenses, and it was very expensive. That one was close to 100,000.
In 1945, her marriage officially ended. That was the same year as Norway and much of Europe were liberated from the Nazis. Hollywood was changing as well. After the war, audiences wanted reflection rather than glossy musical comedies. The novelty of figure skating on screen had also worn off. Henie kept busy with her ice shows and her social life, but in the late 1940s, she made a fatal decision. She cut ties with Arthur Wirtz and began managing her own finances and bookings. According to the contested book, Queen of Ice, Queen of Shadows, this was influenced by her new husband, Winthrop Gardner. They married in 1949. The book claims that Gardner broke her emotionally and financially. Whatever the truth is, the decision marked the start of her decline in Hollywood. Sonja Henie, as she was pushing 40, could also not longer perform at the same athletic level, and the new generation of younger skaters were now competing for the spotlight.
The fruits of her influence began to have an impact on skaters like Barbara Ann Scott of Canada, who won the 1952 or 48 Olympics, excuse me. And then, of course, Carol Heiss came along, and Carol said there was that famous meeting at Madison Square Garden where Carol was practicing, and Sonja came into the room, and Sonja said to her, "They tell me that you're the next Sonja Henie." And she said, "Honey, there's only one Sonja Henie."
But the one and only Sonja Henie was struggling on her own. And it didn't help that her old frenemy, Arthur Wirtz, had signed a new star, 16 years younger than Sonja. Wirtz was well connected and had the big venues locked in, while Henie had to start from scratch. She often ended up taking the leftover slots, and she lost a lot of money. Especially a South America tour failed badly. Some reports also said she started to drink heavily. But in 1953, at 41, Henie made a big comeback. She returned to Norway for the first time in more than a decade. She was nervous. Would Norwegians even show up?
A lot of people showed up, and I'm not sure, it was never clear to me whether they forgave her or they just wanted to see her.
But time was ticking. Sonja couldn't skate professionally forever. After splitting from the playboy Gardner, she married a Norwegian businessman, Nils Onstad. That's when she found a new passion, a passion for art. She threw herself into it with the same drive she had as an athlete. And with her fortune, she could buy a lot of it. She spent a lot of time in Paris, mingling with some of the best artists of her time. Today, her most visible legacy in Norway is indeed the Henie Onstad Art Center outside Oslo. She and her husband founded that in the late 60s.
I'm very proud and happy that my husband Nils and I have built this beautiful art center in Norway. And I hope that you will enjoy it and love it so much as we do. I hereby ask Your Majesty.
But what was her lasting impact in America?
Sonja did more for figure skating in the United States than she did for Norway. A lot of people saw Sonja Henie do those shows, which went on for a lot of years, and that was that was the beginning of the appeal of ice skating to a lot of people.
To what extent did she change the sport forever?
Stylistically, a lot of girls decided that they liked the fact that she was able to that with compulsory figures were an exercise. Somebody once said it was like watching a Horowitz play scales. Fascinating, but not terribly attractive. And you couldn't have any personality doing compulsory figures. What they wanted to see is what Sonja could do. Not only have the skating skills that she got from tracing figures, but they wanted to see someone who could take that skill and make it much more attractive and draw you in emotionally. So that's what she gave. She brought this feeling that this sport was also entertainment.
My name is Fredrik Kalstveit. This episode was made in conjunction with Vesterheim and with the support of Norway House Foundation in San Francisco. The music you hear in the background was made by Jan Skoglund. One last thing before I let you go. This podcast is free to listen to, but not free to make. If you enjoy what you're hearing and want to support the project, please consider making a donation. Just head to the homepage, 200 Norwegians, and follow the steps there.